So again, I'm Hannah Hurwitz. I work with the Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative in Connecticut, and we're housed at Central Connecticut State University. And I have a background in community engagement, so a lot of the work that I do involves working with faculty, working with community groups, helping to coordinate projects and sort of oversee them. So yes, and this is Professor Kumar, who, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello everyone. My name is Rati Kumar, and I'm a professor of communication, and specifically I deal with health communication and social justice research at Central Connecticut State University. And we are all here together having fun. Yes. And I already made this joke once, so if you heard it, don't laugh. But I was saying that I'm here with my funding agency, so I have to say nice things about it. But my area of research, again, like I mentioned, is primarily social justice, children with incarcerated parents. I am working on a project, the Youth Voice Project, that they are currently funding. It's been going on for a couple of years, and that's what brings me here. And this is my first time at a conference specifically for this, so I'm very excited to be here.
And my name is Aileen Keays, Yeager. I manage the Connecticut Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative. And just to follow up with what Dr. Kumar said about having to be nice to your funder, which I know is a joke, but one thing that we want to talk about here are the challenges, and we will be talking about them, so please feel free to say the challenges of working with me, and I will say the same. But the best way, of course, to remedy our challenges is to discuss them when we can, discuss what our needs are, so that we can try to meet each other's needs and mitigate challenges together as they arise, so that we can have a successful project. So, but anyway, I'll tell you about the initiative when I do my part, so I won't go into too much about that.
I think you can.
Yeah. So, should we switch the mic?
Yes, please.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully that's not too rubby.
Is that the...
Is that okay? Okay. All right.
Okay, so I manage the Connecticut Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative. I'm going to review the background of the initiative in part to provide some information about how we've been able to do this work. We have been very fortunate to have dedicated resources, and I know that's something that a lot of universities and nonprofits and practitioners struggle with, and so I thought it might be helpful to provide some background to how the funding was dedicated, so maybe you guys can nudge in your own governments for similar things. So, but it's a little dry, so I'm sorry, their parts will be more interesting. So what is an IMRP? So IMRP stands for the Institute for Municipal and Regional Policy. That is the name of the agency within that the Children with Incarcerated Parents Initiative is within. It is a grant and contract funded entity that is housed within Central Connecticut State University. So we do have to bring in all of our own funding. Most of our work is social justice or criminal justice related. Certainly we have this initiative. We also have a racial profiling prohibition project where we get all traffic stop data from police departments in the state and track that and determine, we kind of put a bad list out, which I can say because I'm not in Connecticut right now, so I can say it's the bad list, but of departments that seem to be profiling based on race or ethnicity. And so that's the type of work that we do. We look at ourselves as trying to be at least a bridge between academia, policymakers, practitioners, and the community for the individual benefit of each member, but also, of course, for the greater benefit of the community at large and whatever the topic is that we're looking toward improving. We also feel, being at the university, that we're committed to enriching students' experiences. We've been very fortunate to work with students from all different disciplines within the university. What's wonderful, in particular about the university we are at, but I'm sure it's not completely unique, is that more than 80% of the students that graduate from Central Connecticut State University stay within the state. So I feel as though if I can plant seeds about CIP, children with incarcerated parents in their minds, then when they go out into business or IT or social work or criminal justice, somewhere in their mind they have a greater awareness of this issue and they can be more mindful of it and sensitive to it. This is the mission for the Institute. I won't go into, So background again, how did we get this project, what was the Connecticut policy that led to such commitment. Around the year 2000, Connecticut policymakers began to look at its criminal justice strategy. The implications for that, the reasons for that were really the exponential rise in our prison population at the time. And in Connecticut, we're a unified system of prison and jail. So when I say prison, I apologize, it is a unified system. And also, of course, the associated costs. And then we were dealing with a budget deficit, which we're still dealing with today. But so the state began to look at that. In 2003, the legislature proposed policy changes aimed at creating greater efficiency within our criminal justice system and hopefully realizing some cost savings by doing that. The resulting policy initiative was called justice reinvestment. I don't know if that is a term that's been heard around the world, but the goals, of course, are to realize some annual savings by reducing the prison population or criminal justice involved population and reinvesting some of those funds into the communities that tend to feed the criminal justice system. The reexamination then of our criminal justice policies in Connecticut began to then look at the front end of the system, preventing those from going in, which has been mentioned in some sessions, it's diversion, but also that means the younger population, the juvenile justice population. So how can we keep our youth out of the system? That mindset led to a focus on children with incarcerated parents because of the faulty statistics that 7 out of 10 children with incarcerated parents will end up incarcerated themselves, or that they're 6 times more likely to become criminal justice involved. It's a negative and inaccurate data. However, it does help the state to recognize that maybe these are children that need some greater attention. And although those numbers are inaccurate, we do know that they face enhanced challenges than some other youth in our communities. And so they're deserving of additional supports. And they are at an increased risk, although not nearly as much as has been previously stated. And I'd like to proudly state that it was through us that 7 out of 10 not even close report, that was through us, and I just want to brag about that for a second. I'll say it came actually, and this is a great example actually of university partnerships. And we worked closely with Ann Adelaide-Destra in the morning keynote, and she had been telling us for years that she just believed these statistics were wrong, but nobody had really gone back and looked through them. And so we approached faculty at the university, and they investigated with a student, and they were able to really look into the numbers and identify that the source was, not a logical source or a reliable source, and that the numbers were actually much less. But that's a great example of actually being able to tap your academics. So in addition to looking at justice reinvestment and preventing our juvenile population from entering the criminal justice system, and CIP, as this was all occurring, a local mentoring provider, one of our Big Brothers Big Sisters providers, actually lost federal funding for their mentoring program. They had gone to the General Assembly, our state government, and asked for a direct line item to continue the program. The General Assembly said, we don't know if mentoring helps children that have a parent incarcerated. We also don't have the capacity to oversee the funding and the program to determine if it works and to see if you're doing what you're saying you're going to do. And they knew my supervisor, because he used to work at the General Assembly and the university, as being a respected body that's nonpartisan and responsible and fiscally responsible. And so they actually approached my supervisor and said, would you take these funds, and then you determine where the money should go, and can oversee to make sure it's utilized effectively and that children are being supported, and that it's not going to waste. So that was the birth of our initiative in a sense. Since fiscal year 08, we've been receiving annual funding from the General Assembly to provide services for children with incarcerated parents or family members. It has been an annual allotment. We've been very fortunate for that. It started as simply providing services through us. We would put out an RFP. We would always very intentionally, it was a very broad RFP because we wanted to see what providers said children needed. They were the ones in the community. We didn't, at the time, we were not experts on this issue. We figured they should let us know what they need, and then we would contract with the awardee. We'd contract with faculty to have an evaluation of the program, and that's really how the initiative started. We're always seeking additional understanding of the kids, and our intent is to use the various data that we gather to help inform policy and practice. This I was trying to put together. Our initiative has grown significantly. It started, as I mentioned, to really be a pass-through in a sense of funds so that we could oversee services and make sure that children were being served in an effective manner. And it's grown substantially. As we learned more about families and what they may need, we really were driven to do more. So we still certainly contract with providers. We also help develop new programs based off of our learning about what we think will be helpful for children. We also, of course, have learned about silence and stigma. And so we've tried, and then my boyfriend that I was dating at the time ended up becoming incarcerated, and so I learned even more about silence and stigma. Even being in this field, it was absolutely devastating, and I still found myself keeping it a secret from many, which I thought was shameful, but I also understood, and it was my survival. So we've sought ways of reaching families that may be struggling with this, that don't feel comfortable getting information from others, or don't feel comfortable telling other people, and thereby are left without information and without the supports that they may benefit from. So we've created a website where we provide information for families. There are a lot of frequently asked questions throughout the website. We also have a children's section, which is what I'm most proud of, and actually I should have pulled it up. I don't know if it'll come up if I try and click the link. You can see. Ooh. I think it's working. Real quick, I'm sorry. So this is our children's page. You can see why I'm proud. Throughout it, children can click on a different icon. Sorry, I'm blocking your view. And they can get information, have some of their questions maybe answered. This is what your parent may eat. This is what your parent may do. This was an actual photo of a prison cell from our Department of Corrections that we had an artist draw. So it's a realistic representation, but it's obviously much softer for youth. But this is just an example of what we're trying to do. In addition to providing providing funding for services, we're also trying to provide information in a digestible manner for families. No, I can't get back to my PowerPoint. Let's see, I'll go back. Sorry, I apologize. Oh, geez. Try it tonight. Stop it. Okay. Let's see. I think also publications, frequently asked, with our frequently asked questions, we created a booklet that now is in the waiting areas of Connecticut correctional facilities. Again, just another way of trying to reach families and provide information. Issue briefs or policy briefs. Media, we've created some fun videos, really any way to just increase education and awareness about the issue to a broad audience, not just families, also policymakers and practitioners. We've been able to become Connecticut's resource center for families, practitioners, and policymakers. We've been able to use the funding, as I mentioned briefly before, to explore unanswered questions, what types of interventions benefit children. Again, the 7 out of 10 are 6 times more likely statistics. And that's through our partnerships with faculty and others. Another example, in Connecticut, we've tried for several years to have family impact statements passed, where, for those who maybe are not familiar, at the time when a custodial parent or a parent of children is facing a potential prison sentence, to have a statement about how a term of incarceration would impact their family be presented to the judge so that they can make a determination as to a balance of public safety and correcting behavior that may need correcting, but also not doing undue harm. We have struggled to get that passed unsuccessfully. The lead was our Connecticut Chief Public Defender, and we were talking and we were like, well, why don't we do a study and we'll gather data, and hopefully the data will help to influence our General Assembly, that this is something that is important and that these parents are highly involved. And so we were able to do a study last year at the courthouse that provided data showing just how involved parents were, and not just parents, guardians, and parents that don't live with children were highly involved with their children or with children. So we're hoping, right now the bill is at the legislature, and we're hoping that this will have a greater impact. But it's another demonstration of how our public defenders were able to come to the university and come together and try and determine a way for having this policy passed. So our role, although we do all of this, it's still a mystery to some, and that's just part of, again, getting to know other people and being open with your needs and what your background is at the offset of a project or the onset of a project. And then finding good partners. We've had wonderful faculty, wonderful community partners. We've also struggled with some, and so once you find the gems, you have your gems. Just quickly, so we're going to show a video very briefly of some of our community partners talking about the community engagement, partnering either, some are faculty, some are community members, some are students, and they're just talking about how the projects that they participated in impacted them. You'll see a student that was turned website developer. He created the website, not the content, but he put it all together. He was wonderful. Dr. Jim Conway is the one that did the 7 out of 10 report. He's worked with us since the beginning and has become a CIP expert, if you will. The chief public defender, who I mentioned, has been trying to get family impact statements passed for years. She's in there as well. State victim advocate. This was not related to CIP, but she was having a difficult time letting the community know of the available services that her office provides. And so we were able to, Hannah got a class to make it a class project where they created these videos that would go on the State Victim Advocate website to communicate to community members that there are supports available and how they can access them. And this is, of course, free resources. And the students have a wonderful project that now they can put on their resume if they wish. And then we offer scholarships for children at the university that have experienced parental incarceration. And one of them has turned into a real advocate for youth. Do you want to?